Hey everyone, welcome to the Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I invited the lovely Rebecca Blevins back for round two because we shared this common experience of being extreme perfectionists in our lives. And we thought it would be such a good topic because so many of us kind of suffer silently. Now, Rebecca is a intimacy, betrayal, and trauma coach and the owner of Oak Mountain Coaching with her husband and partner, love of her life. And we just wanted to kind of touch on our experience of perfectionism and with perfectionism and maybe offer some tools of how we navigated out of it. So, welcome, Rebecca. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I just love spending any time with you.
Me too. I love spending time with you. Well, let's just deep dive right in. What did it take for you to realize that you were in this kind of pattern of perfectionism? Was it something you knew early on, or did it come much later as you started to heal and
Yeah,
grow?
for sure. I think um, I always knew I had a fear of failure, and so I think that was just evident. I was afraid to try things because if I failed, that would kind of validate what I knew to be true about myself, which was that I wasn't either smart or talented or whatever it was, and so, but I never connected that to the the purpose of that pattern, and for me, I was just trying to protect myself from either rejection, disappointment, or failure. And so, but I didn't realize that it was an adaptive strategy to protect myself. I just thought that was just a character flaw. So
Wow, that's
yeah, it
so
was my
interesting.
healing journey. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating. What do you think in your history, your childhood, or your family dynamics, or religious background contributed to you creating that kind of coping strategy or survival strategy
Hmm.
of being
I,
always perfect?
yeah, I think it was a survival thing for me because if I learned that if I could do everything right and please it was mainly my mom, if I could just please her, then I wouldn't be, there was physical abuse in my home growing up, and there was a lot
Yeah.
of emotional abuse. And so if I could avoid her anger and her disappointment, then I felt safe in that relationship. So it just
Wow.
instilled in me this desire to always try harder, to do better, to be better.
So you kind of created this adaptive strategy probably from a very, very early age. I think taught from toddlerhood, we start to learn what's expected and we start to learn what's safe and how to create safety for ourselves. In
Mhm.
our small toddler, in our young toddler minds, it makes sense, right? That
Yes.
we know that if we don't rock the boat, if we're quiet, if we're the good girl, right,
Yeah.
demure,
Mhm.
that we're safe.
Mhm. For
And
sure.
something I had this revelation so much later. I mean, it was probably within the last 10 years that it wasn't just perfectionism and the fear of not being enough, but there was a cultural thing there where if you weren't achieving because of my Asian culture
Mhm.
or my religious upbringing, which was Catholic, there was this incredible need to toe the line, be perfect, right? And what I came to realize was it really wasn't the fear of failure, but it was the shame that would come if I wasn't good enough. And then in our family and culture, shame, anytime you brought shame on the family or if people felt shame, it meant you weren't loved. You were only loved conditionally if you were checking these boxes. And it wasn't a conscious thing on my parents' part. It was just the culture that they were raised in. So they weren't doing this intentionally, but that was the messaging that from a very young age I took on.
Yeah.
So it really was like I was so afraid that I was unworthy of love that I worked so hard to be perfect in everything. And as you know, it's exhausting.
It is. So that, how did that really manifest for you? Was it really just kind of like in achievements or
Oh yeah, academics, of course, was a really big thing. And I wasn't valedictorian. I mean, I was smart, but I didn't kill myself to be the best in that aspect. But I was like good at everything. So that made my parents proud. So that made me feel worthy, right? I was athletic and I was smart and I was musical. So I had these innate talents, right? That I worked very hard on to make them happy. You want to be a winner, you don't want to be a loser, right? So that
Mhm.
was really a big part of it for me. I know you said you had this coping strategy from very early age. What was it like for you to be in such a difficult home life and then trying to achieve so much, through academics? And, I'm thinking about your high school years where there's just so much pressure to get into college but you're also navigating things at home. So tell me a little bit about the feelings that you were feeling and how you were coping with all of that.
Mm. So mine manifests differently. So for me, I didn't try. I didn't go out for school play or I didn't do those things because, I mean, A, we did not have the money. I was in a very low
Right.
socioeconomic status there. But it was, and I didn't really have the support or the encouragement to do anything more. And so I was really kind of just taught that my goal was to become a wife, and to become
Wow.
a mom. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. That was my job. I was put here on earth to become a mom and a wife. And so
Wow. Do you
for
think
me,
that was part of your religious background or foundation that was encouraging that's the woman's place?
yes, absolutely. And that's what I saw my mom do. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She, took care of the family and there was so much of the religious part that created this sense of perfectionism in me as well because I remember hearing from an early age, whatever you're doing, do it as if you're doing it unto the Lord. I don't even know what scripture that is, but so like I was trained, even if you're cleaning a toilet, it has to be perfect,
Oh my gosh. That's
like
so much
no,
pressure.
there's so much pressure
So
because
much
everything
pressure.
you do is a reflection of,
My gosh.
so yeah, for me,
That's so intense to have
it
to
is.
maintain that standard and hold yourself to that standard that, as we know, it's a moving target. You never get there. It's never
Right.
enough because our internal dialogue is always just breaking us down constantly. And then if you have a family member or a social circle that contributes to that narrative and fuels that fire,
Mhm.
right? Um, it's like we're just on a hamster wheel and we can never get there. But it's
It-
so
it-
hard.
Exactly. I think that's, when you and I were talking on our last podcast, and I said, I feel like as women, we're set up for failure.
Yes.
And and that's one of the things. It's like, because we're, a lot of society puts the pressure, it's cultural, it's societal, is that, women have an expiration date. And
Yeah.
and we age out of the system. And I make that joke all the time. I'm like, oh, I've aged out of the system or whatever. But it's really kind of sad that we're always chasing this fountain of youth. We're always chasing these things that we think are going to make us happy, or going to be fulfilling in our lives. And I really, sorry, I kind of went around the block there, but I can see it, in like our last talk when you talked about nobody cares if you make chicken cacciatore. Like
Yes.
they really don't. Nobody
Right.
cares if you miss a spot on the toilet, like that
Right.
in your cleaning.
But
Like
there's such a deep inner wound, right? That
yes,
is driving this inner narrative. and it's a running tape. And I remember thinking, especially when things would get really rough between my husband and I, if I was only better, if I can cook better meals, I can earn more money, I can, I always took all the blame for everything onto myself and thought if I was just better. And it's incredible how our programming can really destroy it, just is so pervasive in our psyche. And we believe that. We believe we're unworthy and we're not good enough. And if only I tried harder or did better, I could fix this. I
Yes.
can fix this, you know.
Yes.
So
That is 100% true. I think, and when you miss it, you miss it by just a tick, just a mark, the shame that that creates, it's just kind of like a negative feedback loop for me, because my internal monologue would go into this space of like, see, you are a failure. See, you can't do anything right. See, if
gosh,
you just would have done this, if you try harder, it's like,
what a gift that we have both navigated our way out of that narrative and story. And to be on the other side of it is such freedom.
yes.
I mean, I feel so free. I feel so free from myself. Like I was holding myself captive, and it was reinforced by all these external factors that I wasn't good enough. To break out of all those paradigms, tell me what sparked it for you, and then tell me how you slowly reclaimed your sovereignty and your power.
Thank you. I think it actually was, just the healing journey that, and the help of my therapist, just recognizing the patterns. And it's like being curious and being kind. It's just that compassion that I have toward myself now. I'm still, I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
And so it's still a learning process because I feel like that's one of my biggest protective strategies that I've had my whole life. It's just like this keeps me safe. And so it's just learning to let go of that little by little. Um, it's tackling the the self-doubt and the fears. It's taking the statistics course, even though I'm terrified of math and you know,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
like it's doing the things and allowing myself to make mistakes. And and
Yes.
I think the biggest part is just embracing my humanity because I'm not perfect. I wasn't
Right.
designed to be perfect. I was designed to fail and to succeed and to experience all the kind of the emotions that I was outrunning. What's the one thing that you've allowed yourself to just step out and do that you never, thought that you would do?
I don't know if it's so much something that I stepped out and did. Well, maybe it is because the work that I do is very unique, right? I work with
Mhm.
souls and energy, and it's not traditional. And I had a lot of criticism and pushback from my family, and they just wouldn't accept it. Just would
Mhm.
not accept the work, and they wouldn't accept that I was doing this work, and just, thought I was crazy. They really did. They wanted me to get um, assessed psychologically, a psychological assessment. But most of the people who watch this show know that their energy is real, and a lot of us are healers, and a lot of us are light beings, and we're here to share and spread light and love. And we have had many lifetimes where we've been oppressed and repressed, and I refused to allow the opinion of maybe 5, 6 people to keep me from my purpose, to keep me from helping the people I meant to help here. And so I would say, and to answer your question, that was probably the boldest thing, was like claiming who I am and why I'm here and walking my path, even though it was rejected by literally everybody close to me,
Mhm.
and just taking the pushback and the comments and the just lack of acceptance of who I am, because that is who I am. I'm a healer and I work with energy, and that's the purpose for my soul being here on the planet. So that probably was the hardest thing for me, was just to stand in my power and keep going, regardless of public opinion, and really loving myself through it and knowing on a deep, deep soul level that this is why I'm here and I will not be, bullied or shamed into walking a traditional path.
That is so powerful and so beautiful.
Thank you. How about you? What was one thing that you did that really showed you that you were healing?
Um, I for me, it's just different layers of the shedding of the onion. It's like not buying into the idea that my material possessions are what bring value to me as a human being. But I think, that was big for me because that was a protective thing. Because growing up poor, having
Sure.
a different life as an adult, I never wanted to be perceived as poor again, ever. And now I'm like, oh, that was a me thing. That wasn't a them thing. Like, I can't control what somebody else is going to think of me, and I honestly
Right.
don't care, you know?
Right. I love that. I love that for you.
But that was
It,
big.
yeah, I think it's really hard for us because when you're in a perfectionist mindset, all you care about is what other people think.
Mhm.
All you care about is being seen. All you care about is doing it right. And I remember one Christmas, we had this beautiful southern home and I had wrapped all these beautiful, it was just so picture perfect. It was so picture perfect to someone look from the outside looking in, but it wasn't picture perfect in my reality of what was happening in my family at that time.
Yeah.
It looked gorgeous, you
Mhm.
know? And I remember feeling so like empty inside, you know? And just realizing like to your point, I was like, you know what? None of this matters. What matters is that I'm happy. That was a real, light bulb moment. Like I could walk away from all of this, you know, and not look back, you know? And
Absolutely.
that was kind of the beginning for me of some really deep soul work to find myself again. What did you do? Obviously, you had an amazing therapist. Did you um, change how you were living your life? Were you just going to therapy consistently? Tell me some of the tools that you brought into your toolbox to help you navigate through like you said, all those layers of the onion we have to peel back in our healing.
I, I think it was just I'm naturally a curious person. And so she sparked that, my therapist sparked that curiosity and that compassion, for the parts of me that are trying to survive in this culture and in this marriage and in this family. And so it was just looking at how does this benefit me, or why am I striving so hard to do X, Y, Z, or be this person? What does that what does that provide for me? And just realizing that a lot of the things that I do in life, and like I said, I still struggle with it. Just talking to Tony last night about our conversation today, I said, well, I still am really kind of struggling with this perfectionism, it's it's recognizing it and being curious, like what is it,
Yes,
And for
yes.
me, it was always about never or trying to protect myself from rejection and disappointment and the lack of love. Because to me, that meant I wasn't loved or I wasn't lovable. And so it's, going back to school, even though there's the possibility that I could fail, but that's okay. I haven't failed yet. I'm actually, doing really well. But it's like
Yeah.
allowing myself the opportunity to make mistakes, to try things that I would have never allowed myself to try, to step in those spaces of fear and realizing that they're not so scary. It was just I wanted to protect myself from being a failure or rejected, because rejection was really what I was afraid of. It's that failure avoidance because I didn't want to be rejected.
Totally. I
And
think men and women can both
yeah.
relate to that, right? It's so pervasive in high school where you just want to belong. You will
Mhm.
do anything to belong. You'll have the haircut, you're gonna have the right jeans, you're gonna try to be whoever they need you to be. You know what I
Mhm.
discovered? I discovered that I really love myself. I spent
Yeah.
decades like filtering myself down and putting myself in every box. I was such a chameleon. I could be whoever you wanted me to be so seamlessly, so easily that people would never know that was I didn't even know or have the consciousness that that wasn't who I was. I was so good at it. I was fooling myself, for decades. So it took a long time to release those fears of rejection, also to let people go who aren't supportive of me and not aligned with me. And it's not really because they're bad people, it's because we have chosen different paths in life. We have different beliefs. We have different capacities for growth and healing, and some people choose not to, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But on this journey, we really need to surround ourselves with people who love us and people who are here to support our journey and not just be there, just cutting us every step of the way or fighting us every step of the way because their fears are being projected onto us,
Yeah.
So I'm so proud of you.
Thank
So
you.
proud of you for having the courage to really break a lot of these negative programs and thoughts and interrupt that circuit and say, I get to choose, and I'm choosing this over here. I know you live in the South, and
Mhm.
there's so much culture seeped in religion.
Mhm.
So how have you navigated that? Because it's very difficult once you start to, kind of emerge and start to see clearly, who you are and maybe how things aren't really lining up with your core beliefs as much, How have you
Yeah.
navigated those changes?
I think, part of my healing journey, and I tell my clients this too when they ask, but it's like I've had to deconstruct every part of my life, from my, marriage to my relationship with myself to my relationship with society, my religion, like
All
all
of
of
it.
that kind of burns down. It's like you're kind of like the phoenix rising again because,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
we're just, and so, one of the big things here, people use religion as identifiers. That's it, they'll ask you how you're doing, and then the second question will be, and what church do you go to? And,
Right.
and that is like, I used to carry so much shame, when I couldn't say, oh, I go to this big mega church or I go here. It
Right.
was,
There's so many out there. I was shocked when I lived in the South. I was like, wow, these mega churches, like they are massive, like city blocks
yeah.
long, like their campuses.
Mhm.
Yeah. How would you,
So,
how did you deal with that?
um, I think before it was more of just getting that look, like you said, you would get the look of disapproval, and I would carry that, and I would
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm
Yeah.
bad. And now I have the different take. It's like this person uses this as we use religion a lot as protective. It's
Hmm.
it like it's so beneficial for some people and it's so amazing for some people. I didn't find that to be true for myself. There was so much religious trauma and religious abuse in my growing up.
History. Yeah.
Yeah. And even in my adult life, so I I think it's amazing for some people, but for me, I'm just trying to relearn who I am as a person where my source comes from, like where my energy
Yes.
comes from, where my love, where my light
Yeah,
comes from. And it may not match yours, or it may not match the person that's asking, but that's okay. And it's okay for them to have their belief system. I support you. I don't support using religious beliefs to harm other people.
I
That's,
agree. I
you know,
agree 100%. And what I've also learned as I become more healed within myself is that I honor your journey, but I don't
yeah,
need to walk it.
mm-mm,
You can feel what you need to feel about that.
yeah,
And that applies to everything, the full spectrum of life. You might find awakening through yoga. That's
yeah,
awesome. I like yoga, but I'm not doing all those poses and I'm not doing this egoic, I'm not trying to fill this egoic need
mm,
to look beautiful in yoga.
yeah, yeah,
That's not spiritual to me. I'm on a spiritual quest and I'm on a journey back to myself at source, the source of me and my energy. And it's very specific to me, just as yours is very specific to you. So part of the growth process, I think, out of this perfectionist mentality is embracing and finding our true essence and who we are and who we were born into this lifetime to be. Because what I realized was every time I was choosing something to fit in, I was betraying myself and my soul,
oh,
betrayal of myself. And when I altered my perception of how I relate to that, I just refuse to do it anymore. I just won't, you know?
I think that's such a big thing when we realize, through the healing, because you have to grieve, so much of what has happened in your life. And a lot of that is what you unknowingly allowed to happen or that you did for yourself with like all of those abandonments. Because every time we don't listen to our gut, or every time we kind of protect ourselves with our perfectionism or our addictions or whatever it is that we use in life, because most people use something to protect
Like,
themselves,
oh, yeah,
because we didn't grow up with well-equipped families,
right.
and so it's understanding um, that that there's a purpose for everything. And so coming back home to yourself means recognizing all the times you didn't, but also like one of the things my therapist tells me is when you know better, you do better.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so,
Sure.
and hold that regret with tenderness, because I regret that I didn't take care of myself, or that I didn't speak up for myself, or but now I do that. And so it's holding both. It's the capacity to say, yeah, I wish I would have done that better, but at the time I didn't know how, and that's okay. But now I do know how, and I can do better. And so I choose to do better.
Well, we're letting go of old versions of ourselves, right? It's like we're just peeling just old versions of ourselves off through our healing. And it's really, I don't like the word forgiveness because we did what we could under the circumstances as the version of the person we were. So there really isn't a forgiveness component. It's really more of an acceptance, like that happened. I honor you and let you go,
Yeah.
right? And people push like forgiveness, like forgive yourself or forgive that person, or I think it's more like self-acceptance and love, like that happened.
Mhm.
And there's nothing I can do to change that. I suffered. There's nothing I can do to change that. But I am empowered from this moment forward to show up differently for myself and for others. And I think as we're healing, we have such a greater capacity to honor the journey of someone else because we've been there and we understand. I think for the unhealed person, they don't have the capacity to see and honor our path because they're not there yet. They're still in it.
That's definitely a great tool, that mindfulness of like, you know, how is this impacting me? How am I, is it impacting an old version of me? Is it, calling forth that old version of me to respond? Or, and it's just having that ability to be aware that that is pinging this wound in me. So I don't know if you experience that anymore, but where you,
Don't, but I did for a long time because, you know, I think sometimes things circle back, right? And you get curious, like, why am I feeling that again? It's just so you can take that next look, that next look, and then it'll circle back after you think, I've healed this already. Why? But maybe it's just that one more time for you to show up in an elevated, compassionate way for yourself and others, right? I always choose myself first. We have to honor ourselves first. And for a perfectionist, oh my gosh, that would never cross our minds, right?
no, no.
Did you
Because
read?
I think,
I was going to ask you, did you read the book Codependent No More?
no, I don't really. So for me, I choose to look at that type of um, struggle or protective mechanism as the fawn response.
Tell me about that.
Because, yeah, so, we go into fight, flight, freeze. That's an autonomic nervous system regulation. So our body gears up to fight, it gears up to flee, to freeze, whatever. But there's also, they found that there's the fawn response. So the fawn response is when we don't, it's basically people pleasing. So
Right.
we take on we're the mirror ball. As I love that song from Taylor Swift where she's like, I can, you mentioned it earlier. It's like I can be whatever you need me to be. I will reflect back your needs. And
Uh,
so it's like we become these people pleasers of like, I will do whatever to make sure that you're not angry with me. I will become the chameleon. And that
totally.
to me, and so I don't think that's a conscious choice that we make. Fawning is how I view that codependence narrative. I don't really use the
Yeah. No,
codependence.
that makes sense. That makes sense to me. It's a
Like
survival technique, right?
it's just survival, right? And so I feel like codependence kind of it has a hint of shame where it's
Mm,
like you do this. Well, yeah, I do this, but why do I do this? Is it a conscious choice? Is it unconscious? Is it a nervous system reaction? Because I don't know about you, but going into people please mode, I won't even recognize it sometime because those neural pathways are so safe and so well, traveled in my brain that I just kind of will slip back into it. It's like, the ferns kind of grow over the path, but the path is always there in our brain. And so I'll slip back into people please response unconsciously when I'm not being mindful, when I'm not aware of the fact that I don't feel safe in my environment. And my husband is wonderful. Now he'll go, are you feeling safe? And I'm like, that causes that is the
wow.
cue for me to
Yeah.
stop, and I'll
Yeah.
stop and I'll think, no, I'm not. And he goes, I noticed. So let's do some grounding or, like
Wow.
we can
That
do that
is
for each
beautiful
other.
that you have that for each other to be able to
Oh,
hold that
yeah,
space for each other and awareness. Because, like you said, those neural pathways are so well trodden.
they
It
are.
takes years. It takes years to un kind of rechart that path, to
Hmm.
actually just completely mud it over and not have to trod that path anymore mentally. It takes so much consciousness, attention to
Hmm.
what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I wanted to circle back because what you said earlier about how you get curious, I think curiosity is such a big factor that no one talks about in how to navigate our way out. We have to ask ourselves questions like, what is the pattern that I'm repeating right now?
Yes.
Or what is this trying to show me or teach me?
Mhm.
Like curiosity has been the breadcrumb that I have followed to get out of my unconscious patterns. Just asking myself questions in a non judgmental way, but like, I'm noticing I feel very triggered right now. What is this feeling, right? So I really do think, I mean, do you think curiosity is a big part of us healing in our journey?
I think it's the one of the biggest parts of the healing because if you add curiosity to it with the compassion, then there's no shame. So you kind of
Right,
exit that shame cycle. And
right,
so I think
totally.
always being curious. And even just when you interact with people, like, you talked about your story with your family, it's like, what is it about my journey that feels threatening to them and their systems of belief that would
Mm,
cause them to react the way that they do? And so, and that allows the space for compassion for them, even though
yes,
that had to
absolutely.
be so heartbreaking for you. And so I feel like that would be a big T trauma, like that would
It's
be.
very hard to feel alone
Mhm.
in a group that you are supposed to feel safe in and loved and seen.
I love that because that's so true.
Yeah. And if anyone out there is going through that, I want to tell you, you feel alone, but you're not alone because there are others out there like Rebecca and myself and millions more who are walking that path. And because of the shame and our inability to show vulnerability, right? We can't connect, we can't find each other, which is why I wanted to put this conversation out to let you know that you're not alone. There are people out there who can help you walk your way back to yourself and find yourself. And so much of it, we've talked about shame and other things, but I think the root of it really is returning to love for ourselves. And when we've spent decades doing these patterns or engaged in these patterns, it's very difficult to feel worthy of love.
Yeah. I think that starts in that developmental phase. I don't think I know that that starts in the developmental phase because when we are striving to be safe in this attachment, this relationship with our parents, and we abandon ourselves over and over,
Mm,
we internalize the changes we need to make to survive in these relationships, like not being allowed to show anger or not performing or whatever it is that we feel like we have to do to maintain these relationships. We internalize that as there's something inherently wrong with me.
yes.
So I need to achieve, I need to people please, fix, avoid whatever it is to remain safe in this relationship. And until we address those things, we will carry that feeling of um, I the Charlie in the Box syndrome. I don't know if you ever watched the Rudolph, as a kid, and he went to the island of misfit toys, and there was a Charlie in the box instead of a Jack in the Box. We always have
Oh,
this feeling of like there's something wrong with me. Like everybody else in the
right,
world is normal, and everybody else is okay, and everybody else is
right.
worthy of love. But yet there's something about me, and that starts in that wound in our developmental years of like it's that self-abandonment, it's the changing who we are to meet these ill-equipped people's needs, and it's like
And
so it
every
creates that our whole life.
every person does it too. Every
Yes,
single person does it. We all have
yeah,
varying degrees of coping and survival skills that we have created from the toddler years.
yes,
Now think about that, right? We're using in our adult lives strategies and coping mechanisms that we have created as children
yes,
to survive.
yeah.
Think about that. It
Oh,
doesn't work anymore. And we
no,
know it, we feel it, right? We feel it in our gut. This
we
is
do.
not, doesn't feel good. But we don't
Yeah,
really, a lot of people don't have a way to find their way out. Like you have to intuitively lean into yourself. Maybe I'm gonna watch this meditation, or maybe I'm gonna go to a library and find a book and just pick something that resonates because we all have different paths up the mountain,
yes,
but we have to find the one that's appropriate for us, you know?
yeah.
And they're all different, but there are common threads, right? Like you said, curiosity and understanding, recognizing it and acknowledging. We've been letting go of shame, you know, vulnerability, I found,
Mhm.
was the hardest for me. A perfectionist and vulnerability are like polar opposites of the spectrum. Like to be able to like inch my way over
Mhm.
thing, incident by incident and get here where I could be vulnerable without shame is
Yeah.
huge. I think vulnerability is the door we have to walk through to free
Um,
ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. And just, I think that is another great point, just exploring that relationship you have with vulnerability and how have you protected yourself from that vulnerability at all cost, and I,
Mm-hmm.
it's just back to curiosity. It's like, what did this provide for you? Does it's like, let's let go of those things that no longer serve us. It's like, it's,
I think you're never going to be as safe as you are when you can fully be yourself internally and externally and release the need to belong and be okay walking alone for a while until the people who resonate and love you for who you are find you. And they will. They will. But
mhm,
sometimes you have to let go of all that baggage you're holding, the people,
mhm,
the toxic environment, the toxic job, the toxic thoughts. Like it's such an unpacking and it takes years. It takes a long time.
mhm.
But there's so many of us out here who want to serve and help you and support your journey, and respect your privacy.
Yes.
People get so afraid, like, oh my God, if anybody knew, and it's like really, it's so courageous to take that step or make that phone call. So, Rebecca, tell everyone again where they can find you to work with
So
you.
we are oakmountaincoaching.com. We are, we work with developmental trauma and intimate partner betrayal trauma, sexual addiction. That's our story. So, yeah,
Yeah,
we just have a
beautiful.
heart for helping people get to that place of authenticity.
What have you noticed about yourself leaving, a career and, that mindset and jumping into this more purpose-driven work? What have you noticed about yourself through that transition?
Um,
Changed for you?
so many things have changed. And my idea of like the American dream or wealth or, achievements, they're so different because I'm very protective of my peace now. Like that is where I consider myself to be wealthy. Like I have,
Yes.
and I'm protective of, that authentic me. Like who is she? What is
Yeah.
she like? And so it's different from, like we call it credentialing when people will come to you and they introduce themselves like, hey, I'm the CEO of
Right.
XYZ, like, oh, I
Right.
live in this area, the
Hmm.
zip code, like all the things that we do to protect ourselves. And now I'm just kind of like, I just want to know people for who they are. I don't need you to
Yeah.
tell me what you've achieved. I just need to
Right.
know who you are. And so it's like, and I try to give myself the same way. It's like, I'm a very flawed human being who's trying her best. It's
I
like,
don't think you're flawed. I think that's another thing we have to really accept about ourselves is we are perfect who we are because we were
yes,
born perfect, right? We were really born
right.
perfect. And that knowing is always inside of us, which is why I
Yeah.
always say, we're really just awakening to remembering who we are and why we're
Hmm.
here, which, I put on in my book, The Path of Me, Finding the Path of Me, because we're just remembering we're in there somewhere still. We might be hiding, we might need some coaxing to come out, but I think really all of us are in there just really crying to be freed. And I'm hoping more people will have the courage to ask those questions and seek support. And really, it's a step-by-step process. I cried and I prided myself in that perfectionist time in my life on never crying, never allowing vulnerability like that. I cried for 4 or 5 months straight, like oceans all day, just crying, couldn't stop crying, 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 crying. That was a big therapeutic piece of my healing. I cried nonstop. I thought I might never be happy again. Like maybe this is just it. I live in this house and I'll never be happy. And maybe this is just my new normal. And then about 9 months later, 9 months, I caught myself laughing. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be okay. But it took almost a year of being so deep in grief. I think grief is a big part of this too, this journey, just grieving everything.
Yeah.
Did you have grief going through your process?
Oh, absolutely. Because you grieve the time lost, like and for me, the failure avoidance, I wouldn't try things so that I didn't
Mm,
fail. Like I couldn't fail if I didn't try,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So like I look back on my life, I'm like, wow, I missed out on so many things because I
yeah,
was just too afraid to try. Or I missed out on relationships, or I missed out on, um, just really that relationship with myself
yes.
because I was so in protective mode of like, let's not do that thing. Let's stay in our lane. Let's do what we know how to do, and let's do it really, the best of our
Be
ability. And
safe. Let's be safe. Stay right here.
yeah, yeah, like no, let's be, so the opposite for me, it's like I was a person that, we do that a lot in our work. It's like if someone comes to you very angry, we need them to get in touch with their sadness, and if someone comes to you very sad, we need to get them in touch with their anger. So for me, I had, instead of the months of crying, I was exploring anger because anger was never allowed. It was so repressed for me, and learning healthy ways to take my anger and use it for positive change instead of, unhealthy anger. And so it it's and healing, like you said, it's so long, and people think, oh, I just need to, get over this, or I need to get past this. And especially with betrayal trauma, we talk about that's a 3 to 5 year recovery time period. And so I honor your crying, and I'm so thankful that you were
It
able
was
to
just
sit.
my
Yeah,
process.
yeah, yeah. But you allowed it, and so many people fight it because, I mean, did you ever once in that time feel like, what's wrong with me that I'm crying so much? Or did you allow it?
It's just like, I didn't, I think it was just a total surrender to it,
Yeah.
like, okay. I would cry, 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 and then I'd get up and make business calls, or I'd get myself together and go to an appointment, and I'd come back home and cry all day. Just like, oh my gosh, I never thought it would end. But I think so much of it, whether it's rage or sadness or shame or whatever the emotion is, it's really gifting us the opportunity to feel it.
Yes.
We will never heal it if we don't feel it. And you need to feel it, not just look at it and look away. You have to be in that fire and burn. The thing about fire is it burns you, but it also burns everything off. It burns everything off. And then it's transmutational too, right? So you're burning it all off in the pain, and then you're transmuting it into something beautiful, like the phoenix rising, right? So fire, when I use that metaphorically with people, it's like we have to sit in the fire of our own being and allow ourselves to burn and walk through the fire. And some people literally have zero stress tolerance for putting a toe in the fire. You're going to have to keep going back in until you can fully sit in it and the discomfort of it. The discomfort of it is what moves the needle.
It is.
And it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Oh, for sure. And if you think about our society and our culture and the way that we are set up to be so disconnected from ourselves, because that serves a purpose, right? Like, and that's
Right.
something, you have to kind of investigate. It's like, who does this benefit for me to be so disconnected with who I am? And so we don't teach people to feel what they feel. We teach people to avoid it. Like,
Right.
let's look over here, achieve, 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 or
Right.
be most popular, or be this and this instead of just being who you are. And so we don't know how to feel our feelings. And that, like, when my dad passed away, I thought that grief would swallow me whole. It was
Oh,
just
gosh.
so consuming. And I couldn't allow myself to sit in that grief because that would be my whole identity at that point. I was just like, this will consume every bit of me. It's so painful. And but I never learned the tools. Like you said, it's the capacity to sit and to
Yeah.
know that that pain will not kill me. But at the time, it felt like I was just going to be consumed by it. And so I think it's just allowing people to tiptoe into, dip the toe in and realize you're going to be okay. I'm here with you. You're in a safe space.
Yes.
Like, I
Yes.
can be a container for your pain. Just, let's go through it. And it's just understanding, like, the more you do, then soon you've got your whole foot in there and you're like, whoa, okay, I'm alive, like, it's not gonna kill
Yeah.
me, this pain.
Right. Right.
It's I think it's just learning that this society benefits from me not being connected to who I am. I benefited from me not being connected to
Right.
who I am. And
Right.
so it's just allowing that and understanding where it was created and how to kind of navigate through it.
As you've journeyed through this healing, did you find you were able to circle back and really kind of grieve for your
Mm,
dad? Because you didn't really allow yourself, right? We're really good at stuffing it, right? And just getting busy or getting, you know, distracted to keep going, to survive. So
yeah,
have you found, like, just in all this healing work that you've done for yourself and your relationship, have you found other areas of your life being able to be healed through the process?
for sure. I think, it's part of recognizing all those areas where we didn't allow ourselves to be who we were. We didn't allow ourselves to feel the full spectrum of human emotions because that's just too terrifying, right?
Right.
And
Totally.
so,
Totally.
yeah.
Yes,
Right.
I
So,
get
and
that.
now that you say that, I kind of just had a thought that's like, if I were to allow myself to feel those things, what was the fear that it would validate in me? That I couldn't come up, I couldn't stand back up from that pain, like what?
Mm.
So I think it's just kind of being curious, it goes back to that curiosity. It's like, what
Huh.
was it would it validate something in me that I was afraid to face? I don't know.
Totally. I totally understand that. Another thing that's helped me a lot recently is I've really been able to change the question from what do I need to do? Because
Hmm.
whenever we're in a situation, what do we do? We're like, what do I need to do? Right? What do I need to do? And we're kind of looking external. What do I need to do? But I've changed that narrative to who do I want to be?
Yes,
Who do I
yes,
want to be? And what do I need to invite in to support who I want to be? You know?
yes.
So that has been a real game changer for me, given me permission to not have to do, because we're bombarded all day long by people pushing, doing, selling, achieving, da 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 da, everywhere. It's everywhere, right? It's in society, it's on social media, it's in the news, it's in, we are just bombarded with achievement narratives and
Mhm.
programs. And if you're not careful, you think that's what defines you.
Yes.
And then you make a lot of choices because of that fear you talked about
Mhm.
of not fitting in, of not being enough, of not meeting an expectation. But once you start to know who you are and ask that question, well, who do I want to be and is what I'm doing every day in alignment with who I am?
Right.
If the answer is yes for me, and I'm very intentional about that answer being yes for me, then my life is going to look very different than somebody who is not asking that question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And choosing the external. Because, like you said, my inner peace and my work here is
Mhm.
my mission. It's
Right.
not just a job, it's not just about how famous I become or what I accomplish. It's not about that. It's really about me being in my soul's work to
Mhm.
support someone's journey back to themselves and their soul, not just their human, but their soul divinity,
Yeah.
right? And you can't quantify that.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
um, it's a different way of living.
Very much so. It's like you have a very different definition of wealth as well. It's like,
Absolutely. I think that was a long way of saying yes. I agree with you, Rebecca. My idea of wealth is very different.
Mhm.
So we're just about out of time. Tell me if you have anything on your heart that you'd like to share with people who might be going through what we've been through.
I think just kind of to go back um, to what we were talking about earlier, is just be curious about what it provides for you. What does being a perfectionist provide for you? And when you can explore that, be kind about what you discover. Don't, try not to shame yourself because we all live in these protective patterns, whether it's, perfectionism or something else. And it's okay to reach out and ask for help, or it's okay to just say, hey, that resonated with me, or, I think you've got a community of people that are they're here to support you.
Absolutely. Well, Rebecca, it's been so lovely sharing this time with you. Thank you for coming back on and having this conversation, which
Thank you.
obviously is so deep and rich because perfectionism overflows into so many different areas of our lives, right? But if you out there are experiencing any suffering and feel alone, know that you're not alone. You can find resources, you can find us, you can find ways to walk your way back home to yourself. So, wherever you guys are, be kind to yourselves, love yourselves, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.